Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Dr. Shulkin, welcome, congratulations. I very much appreciate your service, your desire to continue to serve, appreciate your family's service. I know it's a team effort, and thank you. You know, Alaska, my state, we have more vets per capita than any state in the country, and appreciate very much your continued commitment, or your commitment when you were Undersecretary to come up to Alaska. I think you and I, it's safe to say we had a memorable trip up there, met with hundreds of Alaskan veterans. I think you saw the deep patriotism that's embedded in the heart of every one of my constituents, the toughness, but also a lot of the unique challenges, and that you've been working with us on those, and I very much appreciate it. So let me begin by trying to get a few commitments that relate to that. You came up as part of your Undersecretary confirmation process to the state, but if confirmed, can I get a commitment from you to come back to Alaska and for you and I to spend some time not only in the urban areas, but some of the more very, very rural parts of the state where, again, we have veterans all over?
Senator, we had a very good trip, and nothing I would enjoy more than doing it again with you.
Great. So I take it that's a yes.
Yes.
Great. And will you, if confirmed, will you continue to work on the Alaska pilot program, which you initiated in part because of our trip together, which worked on addressing some of the unique challenges? I want to commend you for your focus on that, but as you know, we still have work to do. Will you commit to me, if confirmed, to continue to work on those unique challenges that we have in the state?
Well, Senator, first of all, I want to thank you because you have been tireless in insisting that we get the program working, and so many of the pilots that we began that are now spread throughout the country actually started in Alaska. And I think we've demonstrated that it's now working better because of many of the initiatives that you started.
Well, it's a team effort,
yes.
And I'm glad that you and I work together on these and want to continue to do that if you're confirmed. You know, speaking of a team effort, you and I have had the opportunity, particularly on a lot of plane flights and things in Alaska and in hearings and office visits, to talk about a lot of issues, Alaska-related, national-related. So one of the things I did for this confirmation process was I reached out directly to the veterans in my state and said, hey, what questions would you want to ask the incoming secretary? So as you can imagine, we had dozens of responses. I'm going to relay a few here, and the ones that we don't have time to discuss in the hearing we'll submit for the record. But the first one meant a lot to me. It's from an Alaska veteran by the name of Bob Toms. Cajun Bob is his nickname. He lives in the Mat-Su Valley. This is somebody who's bled for his country. This is a Marine who has received 6 Purple Hearts, Silver Star. He was on the cover of Life magazine during the Battle of Hue City. Vietnam veteran. He is a hero among us. And his question kind of, and I'm sure a lot of the veterans in the audience can relate to this, he indicated, you know, an interest certainly in the issue, but still a deep distrust of the VA. And he's nervous that your appointment as secretary is going to be more of the same because, as you know, there's been promises and promises and promises, generations of promises. And his focus has been where on people aren't held accountable and veterans are stuck in a system that works against them and not for them. His question regarding your nomination and vets like him is he said he was hoping for someone who, and forgive the language here as a Marine, would kick ass and take names with regard to being the secretary. So how can you assure veterans like Cajun Bob and others, not only in Alaska but throughout the country, that some of the big focuses that President Trump has talked about on really shaking up the VA are going to happen under your watch when, to be honest, you've been part of the outgoing administration? I think that's a question. It was a common theme from a lot of the questions we received, and if you can answer that, I'd be very appreciative, and I know Cajun Bob would too.
Well, first of all, I think when you and I go back to Alaska, we should go meet with Cajun Bob.
I think he'd love that. You'd love that.
Yes.
I'd love that.
Yes, and we'll ask him how we're doing. But Look, I think what Cajun Bob is saying is really important. If you don't have trust in the group that's empowered to take care of you and provide you services, you can't do your job very well. And so
And do you think the VA has trust right now?
I think that trust was eroded, particularly with the wait time crisis in April 2014, and many people lost trust. We know when we first began to measure this last year, our trust level with veterans was at 41%. Today, it's at 61%. So I think that we're slowly regaining that, but we have a long way to go. And what I would say to Cajun Bob is that, look, I approach things first as a doctor. And as a doctor, I know no matter how smart I think I am, or if I did the best in my medical school class, if my patient doesn't trust me, they're not going to listen to what I have to say, and I'm not going to be able to help them. So I think that's very important. As a healthcare executive, I look at our system in VA, and I say, if we don't have a modern system that's responsive to our veterans' needs, that we can't perform our function. So one of the things that I think most people would tell you about me is I don't have a lot of patience. And I am going to be serious about making these changes and regaining that trust. And if I don't do it, I should be held accountable, and you should replace me.
Dr. Shulkin, you were talking about accountability, and you and I have had that discussion, and you've already had a lot of questions on that. The authority that was provided you in the Choice Act, you welcome that, don't you?
Yes.
So you mentioned it was determined it was unconstitutional. I believe no court determined it was unconstitutional. Didn't the Justice Department say it was unconstitutional?
No. My understanding of this, and I'm not a lawyer, I know you are, so I'm on dangerous grounds. My understanding is a court did determine that this was unconstitutional. The Department of Justice failed to accept our request to appeal that. So we were pretty much stuck, and we were overturned. Okay.
Well, listen, we want to work with you because I think that's a bipartisan area of agreement, that the trust that you were talking about with regard to our veterans is undermined when you have these stories. And I'm not saying, as you know, most of the VA officials do a great job and really care about about the veterans community that they serve, but there have been some reports, I think very legitimate reports, where there's been malfeasance and actions that deserve to be punished or relieved. And when that doesn't happen, it undermines the trust from our veterans. So I think that's a bipartisan commitment. We all want to work with you on that to restore that authority, make it constitutional, of course.
Yes.
But I had my doubts on where that was. Let me go back again to another veteran constituent asked about how will the VA increase its presence in isolated communities, in communities that are very rural. What are your ideas for that? And a related question, in Alaska, do you see the Alaska Tribal Health System playing an important role in that area with regard to Alaska Native veterans or non-Native veterans?
Yep. I see our ability to address the healthcare professional shortage in rural areas three ways. First, and most important, to work with the community providers, as we've been doing, particularly in rural areas. In the case of Alaska, working with the tribal consortiums and the Indian Health Service has been absolutely critical, and I'm pleased to say we just signed a 2.5-year extension to make sure that there's continuity of care for our veterans using them.
Thank you for that. I know that was a focus.
Right. So that's number one. Number two is we have to use technology in areas where we're not able to recruit all the healthcare professionals we need. Most people don't realize nobody in this country is using telehealth technology the way that the VA is. We did 2.1 million telehealth visits last year. That was 700,000 veterans. Nobody comes close, and we're doing a terrific. I actually practice medicine from here in Washington in Grants Pass, Oregon, where I take care of patients using telehealth. And I can tell you, I was skeptical, but it works well, and the patients like it too. And third is, we do need these tools to recruit
Yeah.
and to use, frankly, financial incentives to get healthcare professionals to areas that we need them to care for veterans, because we're competing against the community. And in Matsu Valley that you and I were talking about, we've been 2 years
Yeah.
without a primary care doctor, and that's just not acceptable.
Well, we want to work with you again. I think that's an area of bipartisan concern. Getting a doctor out in the Matsu Valley in Alaska is going to be very important, and I appreciate your commitment on that. Let me ask my final question on the broader issue that, again, I know the chairman talked about in his opening remarks, but what's your plan to tackle the current backlog and the process as it relates to appeals? Because as you know, that's been a big challenge. There's some appeals out there that have been hanging out there for years,
Yep.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years.
Right. The appeals process is broken. The system was designed in 1933, and every now and then you have to update it, and we're way past that. So we need an Appeals Modernization Act. I think that several people, I know Senator Blumenthal, Senator Rubio has proposed legislation. We will not fix this problem without legislation to fix it. Let me just update you on a few figures. So the average appeal in the board is 6 years. We have one appeal that is now going on beyond 30 years.
Yeah.
And the reason is you can constantly add new evidence at any point in the process, and it starts over. So this process needs to be fixed. We are really fortunate that members of Congress, the VA, and our veteran service organizations locked themselves in a room until we came up with a solution that we think works, and that's now pending before you. We hope it's reintroduced into this Congress, and we hope that you'll pass it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Dr. Shulk and I look forward to your swift confirmation. Thank you again for your willingness to serve.